All right, I believe we're ready. 7:30 here, everybody. Welcome to regular board meeting, Monday, August 24th. And if you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ms. Munger, can we get a roll call vote, please? I'm sorry, not a vote, a roll call.
All are present.
All right, thank you. For audience participation this evening, I verified just prior to 7:30 that we do not have anyone asking to speak this evening. So we will jump right in with agenda item number 5, the superintendent report with Dr. DePonio, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to run down, kind of where we're at since we met a week and a half ago, and not to go into too great a detail regarding the timeline, but just as a reminder, obviously we closed down in March. From March to June, we were involved in emergency remote learning. We got through the remainder of the school year. From June and July, we conducted a variety of community meetings to gather some feedback on not only what occurred during the months of March through June, but also where we would be headed moving into the 2021 school year. June the 30th, we received the roadmap to return to learn from the governor's office. And beginning in July, we formed committees to develop Lakeshore's plan for returning to learn. That work took place through July and into the middle of August, at which point the plan was presented to the board on August the 12th, which was approved, was submitted to the Macomb Intermediate School District, and has since been approved by the ISD and submitted to the state. Since August the 12th, our building level administrators have been working tirelessly now to put the plan into motion in terms of how it looks at each building level. And so just as a reminder, what we're looking at is obviously 100% virtual option for our families, and a hybrid model, which we would gradually return to in-person instruction, making sure that we're adhering to safety protocols and creating an environment that is best for our students and our staff to return. Our staffing levels look very strong. I want to commend our staff for their eagerness to safely return. And certainly we have a number of staff that have a variety of situations which create concern for them. And I know Dr. Lewis has been working closely with staff to make sure that we accommodate as best we can. And at this point, it looks like we are able to accommodate just about every request that we have received. We currently have slightly over 1,200 students that have elected for 100% virtual, which is a little bit over a third of our student population, which assists with maintaining a small environment, especially as we return back to the building. Our PPE levels are very strong. We continue to receive supplies, not only things that we've ordered through Lakeshore Public Schools, but that we are getting in consortium with the ISD. And then we found out today, one of our staff members, Christy Kraus, got us a donation of 1,500, I believe, plastic face masks. Face shields, and I think that was General Motors that might have come from. So working with a business partnership there, people are chipping in as Lakeshore contributed to our community this past spring in their needs. It's nice to see businesses recognizing the needs that schools have at this point. We continue to work very closely with the health department. I have a meeting again tomorrow with Dr. Lokar. He's the head of the Macomb County Health Department. They continue to give us updates on the current status of viral spread in Macomb County throughout the Tri-County region and throughout the state, and provide ongoing guidance in terms of how cases will be handled when we are faced with that inevitable situation that someone tests positive for COVID-19. So at this point, our buildings are in the process of working out student schedules, getting into the greater details and what it will look like during those first 2 weeks. For our families, we've heard from many families that have expressed concern about not being open fully. I think most people understand the reason why we cannot at this point. They certainly have indicated an appreciation for our adherence to the safety protocols that, obviously those that were required, those that were strongly recommended, and those that have been recommended, and that these committees have come back adopting, the strongest safety protocols that we can adopt. So with that being said, what the first 2 weeks will look like will be half days for our students. We'll bring in what I would anticipate would be a maximum of 25% of the student population. So you could be looking at class sizes that would be roughly 5 students per class to begin. We'll monitor things each and every day, and then at that point we will evaluate where we're at and how safely we are bringing students back, and measure the benefits of increasing student population versus the concerns that might exist. We don't know how quickly we'll go through PPE. We need to monitor that as we reopen, and certainly making sure that kids are adhering to the requirement for face masks, the 6-foot social distancing, and the washing of hands and sanitizing of hands on a frequent basis is all something that we'll be learning, and we'll be working closely with staff and students as we go through that. And so at this point, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm also a realist. We know that we are entering into a school year that we've never entered into before. We want to do it safely. We want to learn from schools that have already reopened, the things that have worked for them, the things that they've struggled with, and all the while making sure that our top priority of making sure that students and staff are safe, and we can bring kids back and get them on track for learning. So with that, I'll take any questions that the board might have.
All right, anybody?
Yeah, I have a question.
All right, we'll give the floor to Mr. Ziegler.
There you go.
Okay. Joe, you said we had 1,200 students that applied online. Is that spread out over the K through 5, middle, and high school, or is it
That's
mainly the high school kids?
That is the total number for grades K through 12. I don't have the specific breakdown of that. The last time I looked at those numbers, there was not a big pocket in one particular grade level or another. So it certainly works out well for scheduling that it would be spread out.
Okay,
Josh had one.
that's it for Mr. Ziegler. So Mr. Densler, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't necessarily have a question. I just want to, first of all, recognize and appreciate the continued work of all of our administrators. I know that this has been a challenging time with lots of different perspectives that have been expressed in different levels of kindness. And so I do appreciate the continued hard work that everyone is doing. to make this return successful. I do just want to voice for the record prior to our opening that I still am strongly opposed to any in-person education. I believe that an all virtual option for all students, or not option, but an all virtual environment for all students is the safest and most consistent that we can offer. That being said, I am here to support the district and the board and the administration as this is the path that we're going down. Anything that I can do, and I know that the rest of the board can do to support, I'm behind that 100%. But I did just want to state that for the record, and then again express my appreciation to everyone that is working long and tireless hours and stressful conditions with no right answers to try and figure this out. It's not an easy task. I don't envy the administration or our staff as much as I'm sure they don't envy us. We're all in tough positions, and so I appreciate everyone's continued work. And that's all that I have.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, then we are going to move on to agenda item number 6, reports for action, starting with the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
So moved.
All right, motion by Mrs. DeLong, support by Mr. Denzler. Any questions or comments, anyone? All right, there being none, Ms. Munger, a roll call vote, please.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Bakotic,
Aye.
and Mr. Denzler.
Aye.
All right. Agenda item 6B, personnel report. Dr. Lewis, please.
Move to approve the following personnel report, non-unit, non-administrative. Move to accept the employment of Karen Jones, interim COVID support liaison, effective September 1st, 2020. Kelly Biondo, interim early childhood coordinator, effective August 5th, 2020. Ann Skelly, interim childcare programming and safety supervisor, effective August 5th, 2020. Non-unit, move to accept the retirement of Sharon Malinowski, early childhood coordinator, St. Clair Shores Adult and Community Education. Her retirement is effective September 1st, 2020, after 34 years of service to Lakeshore Public Schools. Lakeshore Federation of Support Staff move to accept the resignation of Kelly Biondo, remedial specialist, Masonic Heights Elementary, effective August 5th. The retirement of Susan Lupo, instructional parapro, Masonic Heights Elementary, effective September 1st, 2020, after 29 years of service. And Carla Shabazz, school-age child care team leader at Violet Elementary, resignation effective June 12th, 2020.
So moved.
Support. Support.
Okay, I believe that was a motion by Mr. Denzler and support by Mrs. DeLong. Anybody with comments or questions, please?
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Dr. Lewis, can you just kind of give an overview of the nature of the interim positions, specifically the COVID support liaison? And is there a timeline that's set for how long those positions will be in place?
Thank you, Mr. Colling. Karen Jones is essentially being redeployed. She was our international coordinator. She's now stepping into the role of COVID support liaison. This position created to address some of the following areas, being intimately aware of the district plan, being the liaison between the administrative office and each of the buildings, keeping the lines of communication open there, being the district contact for communication with the health department. Karen is also there to support employees in understanding their FERCA rights and related COVID FMLA leaves and emergency medical leave. She will be supporting the Department of Employee Services in working with staff regarding paid sick leaves, virtual assignments, and a litany of other tasks. And really just being a key person here at the administrative level to make sure that we are faithfully carrying out the recommendations and requirements in our safety plan, that we're supporting our staff and our students and families during this time of COVID. And then with Kelly Biondo. Kelly Biondo has served faithfully as an intervention specialist. She has her bachelor's degree in special education. Kelly is on an interim basis stepping into this role that was vacated with the retirement of Sharon Malinowski, overseeing our early childhood programming and school-age childcare. Both of these positions have an interim label. The retirement of Sharon, and then the need that we saw here at a district level to have someone as a point person for COVID-19 related issues prompted us to make these interim recommendations. And we will be evaluating those roles in the months ahead. And particularly with the early childhood position, that would be something that we would be looking to fill on a permanent basis sometime in the future. And the interim COVID position is for as long as we're going to need it.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? All right. I would like to say that I hope or look forward to when we can welcome and congratulate and say farewell to the staff. This is just such a unfortunate time to lose people that have been with us for such a long period of time and not be able to properly congratulate them and look them in the eye. So I regret that timing is such that it is, but it doesn't diminish our appreciation for the years of service that we've received from each of you that have contributed to Lakeshore and our students. So we appreciate you. We just have to do so from a distance. All right. Having said that, Ms. Munger, can I have a roll call vote?
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Densler,
Aye.
Mr. Bakotic,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
and Mrs. Munger. Aye.
All right. We will move to agenda item 6C, K-12 course catalog, curriculum adoption. Ms. Weincourt, please.
I just want to start by saying we will not read these course handbooks or catalogs point by point like we were required to do with the Return to Learning plan. So this should go much quicker than it did at the last meeting. We have a recommendation to approve the following course catalog changes in K-12 curriculum delivery modes. The course catalog revisions include addition of newly approved courses, graduation credit requirements by graduation year as a result of the shift from a trimester to semester-based schedule, and the language that accompanies that, and also addressing curriculum delivery, that our courses will be approved by the board for delivery in person, in a blended model, or in virtual modes. I do want to say that this is a new requirement. We have always approved new courses, but starting last year, there were changes to our pupil accounting requirements, and one of those includes that the course catalogs do need to be approved in its entirety. That also follows the pupil accounting under 50D, which is how we are able to deliver our courses virtually by the Board of Education approving the courses that the district creates and delivers through our own systems instead of having to go through a state catalog for our virtual options.
All right. May I get a motion, please?
So moved.
I think that was a tie. We'll say Ms. Munger with the motion. Can I get support?
Support.
All right, Mr. Bakotic for support. And we'll open the floor to comments or questions from the board.
I have a question.
All right, Mr. Ziegler, you're up first.
How is testing going to be handled with the online students for grades and, finishing out, passing the course?
So by testing, do you mean the annual state assessments or do you mean progress monitoring? Or both?
Well, both, but mainly the progress throughout the year.
So
to
our
make sure the
progress,
kids are going online and doing what they're supposed to do.
so for progress monitoring, we already have, it was part of our return to learning plan that we have a multi-tiered system of support K through 8 that already involves progress monitoring assessments during usually the first 30 days. Our return to learning plan with the newly passed legislation will require it within the first 90 days. In a first glance at looking at that legislation compared to what we have in place, unless there are clarifications that change this, everything we have in place does qualify. NWEA is a progress monitor that we use 1st through 8th grade and the end of kindergarten. They have been working since emergency remote learning to have a way to deliver that virtually. So we will have that virtually for our virtual students, but there's also a good possibility that we will be having our blended students use their remote time to do that testing so that our face-to-face time is spent with other things. When we talk about the younger grades, the specific assessments that they use have to do with speaking and listening to blends. And we have already been working on how kindergarten teachers and support staff see that being able to be delivered and supported through our online platforms and systems.
All right, Mr. Densler, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I found it actually really helpful, even though this is a new requirement, just to look at the entire course catalog. I think I knew about most of these courses, and obviously we approve the additions, but I think whether or not it remains a requirement, it's really helpful. One, it's really cool to look at our course catalog and see a lot of what I think are really innovative and interesting courses that I wish we would have had when I was there. But regardless of if this is a requirement or not, I definitely love to get a copy of this. Even if it's just as an informational presentation, because it was a good thing for me to see and a good refresher of like, wow, we offer some really awesome stuff for our students. So that's it.
Thank you.
All right, I would echo that. I thought the same thing, Josh. I know we see them periodically as they come up, but to kind of put it all in one place and rehash that was helpful for me too. Anybody else want to comment or question? All right, then, Ms. Munger, we're ready for a vote.
All right. Where is it?
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Ziegler.
It is.
Okay, so I'm just moving over because somehow I just lost connectivity. Can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
All right,
Yeah.
so our tech is helping me out and we can continue the meeting from Kurt's device. So we were asking Ms. Munger to do a roll call vote, please.
And Mr. Ziegler is first.
How come we don't do your speaker up? Ms. Munger, we weren't hearing you. Can you begin again?
All right. Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Densler,
Aye.
Mr. Bakotic,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
and Mrs. Munger. Aye.
All right, we are going to move to agenda item 6D. And I will grab my other device.
Okay, agenda item 6D is approval of the elementary student parent handbook revisions. Move to approve the proposed changes for the 2021 student parent handbook for the elementary schools. In this proposed revision and with the subsequent revisions that you will hear for the rest of the parent handbooks, we are again addressing requirements of the district by including a COVID response disclaimer instead of changing everything in the handbook that aligns to it. And also a new requirement that the Board of Education must define what a full-time student is at each grade level. So you will find that reflected in the parent handbooks, both of those items for all of them. Specifically for elementary, there's changes in parents and visitors. Lifelong guidelines and life skills has been replaced with character traits with our adoption of the Positivity Project, redefinition of the student assistant specialist as a social worker to reflect the current positions and what service is provided, shifting the grading periods, and also, like I said, defining a full-time student.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Weincoop, for jumping in there. I appreciate it. Okay. Can we get a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
All right. Motion by Mrs. DeLong, support by Mr. Colling. All right. Open to the board. Comments or questions, please?
Rochelle, could you maybe briefly go over what it says about full-time students and maybe what that means for virtual and hybrid students?
Yeah, so full-time student is just defined as attending at each level the number of hours were operational. So at elementary level, it's either 8 or 9 courses because the specials are included in that, and you'll find that reflected in the middle school and North Lake. They have 7 required courses because that's the way their day breaks down. Where at the high school, you have 6. So it's basically being assigned a full schedule without any breaks. And thank you for making that point about what that means for our virtual students or when we're attending remotely, because this is an important change, again, reflecting the difference between emergency remote learning and scheduled and planned for virtual learning. So in the emergency remote, while we continue to offer specials teachers and interacting with students, there was very little of that because families were focused on how do I get literacy and math, where the expectation now is if you're a virtual student, you are interacting with all of those specials, with all of the content, with all of the courses at secondary that you are assigned, that these are not optional, that you are being given the entire experience just like you would if you were attending in person.
All right. Anybody else? All right, Ms. Munger, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mr. Densler,
Aye.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
and Mr. Bakotic.
Aye.
All right, we are going to move as soon as I catch up. Okay, agenda item 6E, KMS Student Parent Handbook Revisions. Again, Ms. Weincoop.
Thank you. KMS Student Parent Revisions, we move to approve that the proposed changes for the 2021 Student Parent Handbook for Kennedy Middle School, including the proposed revision updates of a COVID disclaimer, again, changing lifelong guidelines, deleting those and adding the character traits from Positivity Project, defining full-time students, defining delivery of courses to be available in blended or virtual formats, and the removal of the athletic guidelines from the Student Handbook and referring to the Lakeshore Public Schools Athletic Handbook.
All right. Having said that, can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
All right. Motion by Mr. Bokotic. Support, please.
Support.
Support by Mrs. DeLong. All right. Open for questions or comments.
I just have a question, and this kind of applies to both Kennedy and the high school because they have traditionally more than one classroom that they're going to. Obviously, we're not going to be doing that. Is there going to be a change in how, or is that going to be reflected? And I think you generally discussed how we're talking about delivery. Is that going to be addressed in the delivery section of the handbook to kind of explain to parents how that'll work?
So in the handbook and in the course catalog, there is just a sentence that says that the Board of Education is approving all courses to be available to be delivered in person in a blended model or as a virtual option. So it's not in the handbook or course catalog saying you will attend this many days at 25%. That's in our return to learning plan, which is why we also have the disclaimer at the very beginning that says any items that apply to the COVID time for return to learning will supersede anything that's approved in the handbook. So we've covered it both ways. So we don't have to undo the handbook and the course catalog. We're marrying the two. Did that answer your question, Mr. Bokotic?
Yeah, it kind of, I think, covered most of it. I think I was more concerned with, the code of conduct, kids in the hallway, or need to report to your classroom, but I think that also covers some of that as well. I didn't know if there would be more instruction to parents in that handbook as to if you're signing on virtually, you'll be expected to attend by logging in by a certain time period. Like we would say, attendance is when you're in classroom by this time, or attendance for a virtual student's obviously different. So I don't know if that had been reflected at that level, but it sounds as though, yes, we've kind of indicated some of these aren't going to be applicable this year. And obviously there's additions that will kind of clarify some of that.
So we do address attendance in there, but drilling down to what that requirement is, we are still waiting for the legislatures to define how we have to track attendance during this time. So that's not something that we can put the details in, which is why, again, we put the disclaimer to apply to COVID-related responses in our return to learning plan. And within there, address that attendance is required, what we will do to track attendance, but we'll have to leave some of that broad, especially during the current time while we're still awaiting guidance for what we're required to do for pupil accounting.
Okay, and yeah, I kind of figured too, if you really went that into the details, you'd have to just rewrite the entire handbook because this year's going to be so different. So
yes.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Ms. Munger, go ahead with the roll call vote, please.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Densler,
Aye.
Mr. Bokotic,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
and Mrs. Munger, aye.
All right. On to 6F, the Lakeshore High School Student Parent Handbook. Ms. Weinkoop.
Thank you. I moved ahead too quickly, so let me just adjust just a minute here. Okay, thank you. Move to approve the proposed changes for the 2021 Student Parent Handbook for Lakeshore High School. The proposed revisions for the high school student handbook include updating the identification or clarification of a full-time student, absence and failure to earn a letter grade, bell schedules, classroom rules, off-campus lunch for seniors, and report cards, which reflect the change from a trimester to a semester-based schedule.
So moved.
That was Mr. Densler with the motion. I need support.
Or
Mr. Colling? All right, board, open to questions or comments. Really? None? Okay. All right, Mrs. Munger, go ahead, please.
All right. Mr. Colling,
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle,
Sorry, yes, aye, thank you.
Mr. Bakotic,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Densler,
Aye.
and Mrs. Munger, aye.
All right, agenda item 6G, North Lake Student Parent Handbook revisions. Ms. Weincoop, keep going.
Thank you. Move to approve the proposed changes for the 2021 Student Parent Handbook for North Lake High School. The proposed revisions for the handbook are attached. We have the COVID disclaimer. We have full-time student definition, and we also have graduation requirements. You are finding these in both the North Lake and the Lakeshore Handbook because as, again, we move from trimesters to semesters, credits will be reflected differently, and we align those to the grade levels as they move through.
All right, we'll take a motion.
So moved.
Support.
All right, and a motion by Mrs. DeLong, support by Mr. Densler. Questions from the board, please. All right, there being none, Mrs. Munger, roll call, please.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mr. Densler,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
and Mr. Bakotic.
Aye.
All right, agenda item 6H, Lakeshore Public Schools Athletic Student Parent Handbook revisions. Ms. Weincoop.
Last but not least, move to approve the proposed changes for the 2021 Athletic Student Parent Handbook for Lakeshore Public Schools. Most of the revisions are reflective of including KMS guidelines and creating one LSPS athletic handbook instead of separating it by middle school and high school. You will see changes to academic standards, admission, substance abuse policies, transportation, athletic director, coach, parent, and player meetings.
All right, board, motion and a support, please.
So moved.
Support.
All right, Mr. Colling and Mr. Bakotic. Questions from the board?
Where do North Lake students fit into this if they are eligible to play sports? And isn't there some like I thought basketball, North Lake was playing basketball. Where do they fit into this athletic handbook?
Ms. Munger, that is a great question, and it is one that I don't have a definitive answer to right now, but I will look into that and get you that information. I do know at this point basketball was the only sport where they were participating with other schools at North Lake.
Okay. And then my other comment is about game day dress. In here it says game day dress will be guided by school dress code and the coach. However, team uniforms are not to be worn to school on game day or any other day unless allowed and approved by the coach and the athletic director. I don't understand why we aren't wearing jerseys on game days for any sport that we have to bring some school spirit. I know this is something I had asked about before, and I still see it listed like this in the handbook.
So I am going to defer again and get a definitive answer, but here's what I will tell you, Ms. Munger. Some of our athletic apparel for participation in sports, not jerseys, but you and I are both parents of swimmers, And I know that my son probably wouldn't have been the most appropriate for him to be wearing a Speedo to class all day. So this policy is reflective of that is defined as a uniform, but that uniform does not fit the dress code for the school. And so we're not saying that we can't wear jerseys. In fact, I think it has some allowance for if your coach says you're wearing your jersey, you're wearing your jersey that day. But to avoid some of the other conflicting what is appropriate to participate in a sport and what is approved by the dress code.
I'll also hop in here real quick, Liz. There's a lot of details that I think have not been completely discussed given the shift in priorities of how we're spending our time and things that we've got to get on the front burner and make sure that they're taken care of. Certainly, when it comes to kids wearing their jerseys, to school, I think it's something that we want to see, kids promoting their teams, promoting their school.
Certainly.
So, things that might be reflected in there. Currently, it doesn't mean that they aren't items for consideration.
No, I completely understand. And thank I understand.
All right. Anybody else have a question or comments here?
Yeah, I have one about transportation. I know obviously we're not doing any transportation at the start of the year for schooling. For the athletic teams that are cleared to play, will there be amendments to the transportation? I know normally it seems like they would all travel together, but that might not be feasible for some of these. Is there changes to that requirement, or is that just going to not be enforced as it normally would be?
Rochelle, I can address that. So we can maintain social distancing on buses for our fall athletics because we have the buses and we have the bus drivers that could, where they typically might all pile into one bus. We can spread them out on a number of buses. That doesn't work during the school day because the volume of students that we have to transport obviously far exceeds our capabilities to keep them 6 feet from one another. So in terms of busing for athletic teams or clubs and activities, should we be in a position where that's taking place, we'll be able to maintain 6 foot social distancing on buses.
All right, would also be an option for parents if they wanted to transport their children independently. Would that be something that may not have been allowed in the past, but would be more favorable or would be allowed without that kind of formal permission?
We probably in that case have coaches work that out with families rather than that be something that we'd be involved with.
All right, Mr. Bakotic, are you all set?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm having a tech issue, so I have moved locations once again, but I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Ziegler. And Mr. Bakotic, maybe you can silence your microphone because I think we're getting a little feedback.
My question is, you talked about the academic standards. How did that change? Did the state change the academic standards, or are we just changing them for our district?
I believe the academic standards changes that are reflected are because of including middle school in the handbook and the addition of middle school instead of having two separate handbooks.
All right, and Mr. Ziegler is settled. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I just have one final question. I think we joked previously about starting a tennis team because that's more safe at the current time, and we don't have one currently. But is there anything like that would, and this may not be a handbook situation, but that would allow creation newer teams or clubs that previously didn't exist that might be more appealing given the current health situation?
We do have the opportunity to add more as there is student interest. So for instance, last year we added, why can't I think of the, I'm sorry, I'm
Lacrosse.
going through-
Well,
we added
yeah,
lacrosse, thank you. And like, the thing with the ball that was bad. So we added lacrosse as a club team and started that. And that really has to be reflective of student interest. But certainly we have a very responsive middle school and high school athletic department and administrative team that is always looking for things that students are interested in. So that opportunity is there as we have students who are interested in it.
I do have one final question, and I apologize that this is kind of going back and it's a little bit out of order, but I hope you'll forgive me. Mr. Bakotik's question about transportation made me think of our consortium classes. So maybe Dr. DePonio, could you talk about, are we talking to other districts about those courses? Do we know if they're still going to be offered? Because in the handbook, it still says that they're available, and also that transportation will be provided. And I'm sure that has changed. If you could describe that a little bit, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, there's been no official decision at this point, but based on the requirements of phase 4, we would not be permitted to take kids off campus. We have another county meeting tomorrow. We hold them quite frequently, and that issue is something that I think will be resolved tomorrow. But again, going back to the prioritization of things, that's been a topic for discussion in previous meetings, and it's gotten bumped. So I'm hoping that there is some resolution as, scheduling, obviously, we're getting down to the wire here. So I would anticipate that would be suspended for at least the first semester.
Okay, thank you.
In response to the academic question, I just went back and double checked the wording and what was changed. So the two things that were reflected is one, when we talk about the percentage of passing that a student needs and the number of days, that had to reflect the change from trimester to semester, and also adding the KMS language. So those were the changes made to academics.
All right, thank you. Anybody else need to weigh in? All right, Ms. Munger, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Densler,
Aye.
Mr. Bakotic,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mr. Cowling,
Hi.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
and Mrs. Munger, aye.
All right, moving on to agenda item 6I, the School Loan Revolving Fund Annual Loan Application. Mr. Vasili, please.
Okay, this is the School Loan Revolving Fund Annual Loan Application. Move to approve the annual loan repayment activity application for participation in the School Bond Qualifications and Loan Program. The Michigan Department of Treasury School Loan Revolving Fund offers districts the opportunity to borrow money to pay debt, principal, and interest payments. The loan is designed to cover the timing differences between receipt of property tax revenue and debt payments. And this loan provision was included in the 2016 bond proposal approved by voters on May 3rd of 2016. It's basically an annual requirement of the Michigan Department of Treasury. Most districts in the state do borrow from the SBLF to help make principal interest payments. This prevents us from having to increase our debt mills above the 7 mills that were approved by the voters. The balance owed by the district to the SBLF will be paid with debt mill money, not general fund money, as scheduled debt payments decrease in future years. Estimated interest rate of the SBLF as of June 30th of 2020 is 3.0%. And the estimated amount to borrow for 2021 school year is $565,282. So that's the recommendation. I invite any questions.
All right, I will ask for a motion and support first.
So moved.
All right, I
Support.
believe that was a motion by Mr. Colling, support by Mrs. Munger. And, sorry, do we have that? Motion by
Support.
Mr. Colling, support by Ms. Munger.
It was Mrs. DeLong.
Oh, thank you. All right, Mrs. DeLong. Okay. Would you please just explain a little bit of timing? I think we have some people maybe watching the meeting that haven't watched a lot of school board history. Can you touch on the timing of school budgets versus state budgets and our expenditures compared to when our revenue comes?
Yes, we have 4 separate debt issues, and we have a principal interest payment schedule and all those. And pursuant to that, we have 7 debt mills allocated for the revenue piece that to pay off the principal and interest payments. So usually your debt principal interest payments come sooner than your revenue from your debt mills. So there is a timing difference where you're going to owe a little bit of money. But as these debt issues get older, the revenue starts to catch up, and they're paid off towards the end. So general fund money is kept separate. This is strictly the 7 mills for debt. So we're not going to touch the school operating millages or the state education tax. The general fund is completely separate from these debt mills.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members, questions or comments? Okay, Mrs. Munger, another roll call vote.
Mr. Bokotic,
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mrs. Densler, Mr. Densler, I'm sorry,
Ow.
Mr. Densler,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
and Mrs. Munger, aye.
Okay. Ms. Munger, you're going to get a little break now. Thank you for repeated roll call tonight. We're going to move on to agenda item number 7, board commentary, and I'm going to start with Mr. Bokotic tonight.
All right, thank you. I don't have too much to say. I did want to start out, I did attend the virtual Q&A session for Violet Elementary. That went very well. Ms. Weinkoop was there along with Violet Principal Grassi. They both did a great job answering questions. And it seemed to be very positive from the period that I observed it, which was most of the session. So I'm excited to see what can happen. I think the way they're doing it is very good. I think we're starting at a quarter, but I think it's like half or a quarter attendance for the whole class, going for a half day to start once per week. And then we're going to gradually kind of ease our way into hopefully being able to have 2 days a week at 50% of classroom attendance. So I think that's a good way to go. I think from the meeting, I'm much more confident sending our kids to school in a couple of weeks here. So I'm looking forward to the school year. I hope everybody else is too. And it is like we've been through this before at other meetings. It's going to be a different school year, but I think we've all been able to put our heads together for the last 3 months, figure out some things that should work. And obviously, like Joe said, we're going to have to roll with the punches. We're going to have to be fluid here and really kind of change as things dictate the need for that. So we can all be patient with each other. We can all be supportive of each other. And I think we'll make it through. This is going to be a different year, but it's going to be one that I think we can all be proud of at the end of the day.
All right, thank you. Let's jump to Mrs. DeLong.
Good evening, everyone. I kind of mirror what Mr. Bokotic said. We need to pack the patience. I have heard, from various people in the community, they are very appreciative of everything Lakeshore has done and is doing. I have not heard any negative comments. They are just blown away by the compassion and the dedication of everyone. As I discussed earlier with Rochelle before the meeting, this is going to be a very different year. We all have to pack the patience And there may be things that are going to come up that we're not anticipating, but I have complete faith in our administration, our Board of Education, the parents, the teachers, that we will work through this and we will eventually meet our goal of having everybody back in school in person and being able to give the incoming seniors as much of a senior year as we can possibly give them, like we did for our outgoing seniors. So I'm looking forward to the start of the school year. It's going to be challenging, but we will get through this. And congratulations to Sharon Melanowski on her retirement. And thank you for your service of 34 years. And have a good weekend, everyone.
All right, Mr. Cowling, would you like to go next?
Sure. And I'll hopefully be quick. I just want to address just how frustrating this entire situation is and has been. And even though, and as I said last meeting, there is no perfect plan for this moment, it doesn't exist. I'm still confident in the process by which our plan came out and all the input that went into it. And that said, everyone wants clarity. We don't have it as a board. We're still waiting on things, as we heard from the legislature. We just got things last weekend that, in my opinion, we should have had months ago. So that makes it really, really difficult to make these tough decisions. But again, that said, our plan is flexible enough so that all the input that we're getting, all the emails, all the calls, it's valued and it's important. And we need it to keep coming, whether negative or positive. We need to be able to be open to all of that. And while it may be that, one board member is responding in most cases, know that every single one of us, we're reading that, we're valuing it, we're having conversations with Dr. DePonio. He's on the phone with us often. I know he is with me, and I appreciate his willingness and availability there. But I don't know anyone in education who's not losing, sleep over this. And it's all hands on deck, as it was always going to be. And again, I just value everyone who's been a part of this process, and just stick with us and we'll make it through. We'll make it through together. That's got to be the plan above all else. So thank you for everyone who tuned in. Congratulations to everyone who's joining us teacher wise with those positions. And also I want to echo Susan's sentiments in saying congratulations on retirement as well. And it's too bad that we can't be together to celebrate that. So thank you all and have a good night.
All right, Mr. Densler, go ahead, please.
Well, being known for my long-winded comments, this is going to come as a shock, but I really just don't have anything at this point in life. I don't know if anyone else is feeling it, but I'm sure everyone's feeling just totally done with this. If I could fast forward time a year or two, I would have done it 6 months ago. Again, I just want to express my continued appreciation for everyone within, the Lakeshore family, of course, our administrators, staff, but our parents that are working to give the best experiences and make the best decisions for their kids. Our students who are trying to figure out what all this means and navigate a tough situation. So we're all in the same boat and in the same storm together. And I just appreciate all of you that are helping us to make it as successful as possible. So that's all I really have. I hope everyone continues to stay safe and stay healthy. And we'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Ms. Munger.
Well, I was on the Google Meets call for the high school, and Mr. Pop, Mr. Stevens, Ms. Weinkoop, and Mrs. Bross did a wonderful job just answering question after question after question regarding a variety of things. And teamwork really makes the dream work. And this team has done nothing but excellent, excellent work to make all of us feel as best as we can. It's a tough decision no matter which way you go. I know there are many families with special needs children that have many questions, and I know that our administration is doing the best. While Josh said we're all in the same boat, we actually aren't all in the same boat. And I know our administration is trying to check every single boat to make sure that everyone's well taken care of in our district. As a parent of an incoming senior, yes, it is kind of odd here. We thought that that it was just the end of last year, but now it's the beginning of this year as well. But we know that the Shorean Nation, we're one big family, and everyone will be well taken care of. Have fun with your families this upcoming holiday weekend. Enjoy the last bit of summer together, and we'll be ready to get back to work right after the holiday. So thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ziegler, and I'll leave my mic open for you, so I think that'll hold up for you. Let us know if you don't hear Mr. Ziegler clearly, okay?
Congratulations to Sharon on her retirement. And Sue Lupo, for 29 years, you'll be very much missed at Masonic. You put in a lot of years, and a lot of parents will miss you. Everybody pretty much said my sentiment on the staff, the parents, and the administrative effort to open up our school. I know with all of us, everybody's safety is our main concern here. And I believe everybody believes that kids need to be in school. That's where they will learn the most, benefit from the social environment. And I just hope that we can get this back on track and get everybody back in school. Just want to thank everybody, the board, administrative staff, the teachers, the maintenance, the custodians, all of you. You've done a great job in the community that put in a lot of work also. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. This is that kind of meeting where I feel like most of what I wanted to say has been touched on, so I'll just recap a little bit. Mr. Cowling, you spoke it pretty well in terms of where we're all coming from, and words like frustrating and challenge and teamwork, and certainly the communication with our community has been super important, and we've seen a lot of the responses, a lot of it on social media even, and no matter what the call, the question, the concern, the comment is from our community, it is helping us continue to evaluate and plan and kind of hone in on a better and better plan as each day passes. So I appreciate you calling that out, Mr. Cowling. Mr. Denzler, these are clearly different times. And it is unusual that you are have less to speak, but it clearly is different times. It's a time of professional challenge like never before. And we've all worked and experienced things where maybe personally or even a coworker, went through something that was that serious magnitude of professional challenge. This is just happening to everybody at once. And that's what makes it so difficult. We would certainly be there to support each other as singularly we have people going through experiences. This is just everybody at one time. So it's incredibly hard. I am super proud of how our staff and community have pulled together to get us where we are today. And, we're not finished, but we're still plugging along and moving forward. And Mr. Cowling, I would agree with you. It would have been nice to have certain details sooner. I do understand that, some details weren't available, and this is a changing time, and we'll deal with the change as it continues to occur. But sometimes there are pieces that could have been provided to school districts sooner. And I've been in this position, at least on the board, not necessarily as president, but on the board long enough to know we just don't always get the respect of that courtesy. So we just keep moving along, doing what's right at our local level. This is an unusual school year in terms of most people are going to start the school year. Most of our staff starting the school year fatigued. People have been working very hard all summer long. This is the time when they usually, go off and maybe look at something as professional development, pursue an interest, rejuvenate. I know there's always professional development over the summer. This has been a summer unlike any other. So typically we come kind of back to the buildings in September and everybody's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go. And I know that this is different. Everybody's feeling worn and fatigued, and we'll do it. We'll pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And I know from past experience, when we start to have interaction with the kids, that's where our energy will come from. So I have no doubt that we'll be there. I just know that looking at faces in the last couple months, I see weary faces. So let's all look forward to just seeing our students and letting them share their energy with us, because we definitely need that boost. Lastly, I would just like to say that we're all evaluating what's the right thing to do. And part of my opinion or my philosophy on coming back is about the value of educators. And, there was all the essential workers in the beginning, from grocery store and delivery to medical and typical first responders. We have to figure out where our educators weigh in on that. And I really believe that the value of educators make us a high level essential workers, and we need to be available and we need to do everything we can in consideration of all of our students. And not all of our students are in a position to learn best being 100% online. So I'm really proud that we're taking a stand and going to offer something more to our Lakeshore families, because some of our students need this more than others. Some of them were very successful in the spring and could be very successful going forward, but some of them need us in a way different than online learning. So I'm really proud that we're offering that. And with that, I will wrap up my comments and ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, I know I had so moved by Mr. Bokotic. I think I had support by Mrs. Munger. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Stay safe.
Good night.